Yo, what is up, guys? We're back with part 5 of What If Naruto Was Toshiro's Reincarnation. And we pretty much we resume this what if right after the time skip. Naruto and Jiraiya would be coming back from their trip and they'd be walking in. Naruto would flash step to the top of a pillar, like a building, and or like a big tree, I guess you could say. I don't really know what to call it, like a electrical pole. Yeah, that's the word. And he'd pretty much say, I'm home, Konoha, and I missed you. After this, he'd get off the pole and he'd pretty much jump down it, and he'd see Sakura. They'd have their usual reunion, and this time he just wouldn't get punched. Now, after this, they'd meet up with Sasuke, and after that, they would, walk down to get some ramen, and then they would go to Tsunade's office to report back after, the training that Naruto went through. Now, basically, Naruto would, hear that Tsunade actually wants them to do a kind of like a new belt test, and that their opponent is outside. After this, Naruto would pretty much jump outside or like go on the balcony, and he'd see Kakashi. Naruto would be like, "Yo, Kakashi Sensei," and Naruto would say that Kakashi would say that Naruto has grown. Say, "Hey, Naruto, you definitely grown over the 3 year, over the 3 years." After this, Naruto would then go into his pouch and bring out a book, and he would hand it over to Kakashi. Kakashi would pretty much have like a brain spasm before his eyes pretty much turning into light. You know, uh, like a usual character would happen in anime. And after that, Tsunade would break him out of it, telling him that they need to do the new bell test. After this, Kakashi would say, "Meet me tomorrow at 1 p.m. at Training Ground 7, just like we used to do." After this, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura would head home after, hanging out a little bit. They would head to their respective homes, and Naruto in this timeline would have a different home. He wouldn't be living in that small apartment, but this time he would be living in kind of like a house or like a better apartment. He would then head home and see that everyone like pretty much put his stuff there, and he would read a note saying that Konohamaru actually put his like furniture and new stuff there, and he'd see like all the ramen, like hundreds of packets of ramen, and then let's just say he would start to drool. He would pretty much just go to sleep, and the next day he would wake up and eat breakfast before heading out. Now he had around 2 hours before the training ground exercise would happen, so he'd just go to the training ground and practice his swinging. And in this timeline, he definitely got a lot stronger. Just because his bankai isn't in his adult bankai yet, doesn't mean he hasn't gotten stronger. But basically, Naruto would wait around 2 hours before he'd head to the training ground, where he'd meet Sakura and Sasuke. And this time, Kakashi wouldn't be late, or he'd be like 20 minutes late. So Kakashi would then come up, and basically they'd head inside the clearing. Now Kakashi would explain to them the rules, just like usual, and damn, damn. Um, would then explain to them about the rules of the rules of the bell test, just like he did 3 years back, and they'd pretty much nod their head in acknowledgement, and Kakashi would then say start. Naruto would unsheath his sword so fast that Kakashi couldn't see, and he'd pretty much cut the bells off. But before he can go to grab them, Kakashi would turn into smoke. Kakashi would then be heard from somewhere saying, that's a bit too fast, before they would never hear him again. Now they'd be standing there for around 10 minutes before Sakura would then punch the ground. This time having a little more force behind it. And pretty much, Kakashi would find out, and he'd be surprised by Sakura's progression. Now, after this, they'd pretty much start the taijutsu battle. Now, Naruto, in this time, like Kakashi would not put Naruto in that, jutsu that guy uses to basically wrap his opponents in bandages and then basically send him bulldozing towards the ground. He won't be caught in that. So when Kakashi would try to use that jutsu on him, Naruto would pretty much dodge and quickly try to cut Kakashi, but this wouldn't work. Now, Naruto and Sasuke would devise a plan, and Sakura would also devise a plan as well with them. Now, they'd be in that river part where Kakashi would do the big fireball jutsu, and Naruto would say, Sasuke now. Now, Sasuke would pretty much use a Fire Style Majestic Destroyer Flame, and Naruto would use a Hado number 58 Tenron. Now, Sakura would use a pretty much like a mud style, earth style mud wall, and behind Kakashi so he couldn't run back. So the strengthened Fireball Jutsu would be heading towards Kakashi, and Kakashi couldn't do anything about it. Now, Kakashi would try to use a water style Water Dragon Jutsu, but in that time of Kakushin, Sasuke would cancel the jutsu, and Naruto would flash step behind Kakashi before slicing the bells off and knocking Kakashi out, and then getting the bells and throwing them towards Sasuke and Sakura. They would then tie Kakashi to the log, and they'd pretty much taunt him for the rest of the time, for their exams. After this, Kakashi would say, good job, you definitely grown, and they'd get the SOS from the Sand Village telling about Gaara being kidnapped, like Gaara and, yeah. Damn. They'd pretty much get ready, and the next day at the peak of dawn, they would head out. Now Team 7 would be running out of the village, and they would be running just running towards the Sand Village when around 2 hours, and they would be intercepted by none other than Uchiha Itachi. Now, Sasuke would go up and pretty much say that he doesn't want to see a clone, and he'd quickly body flicker, going to use Chidori, like a kunai, and like put some Chidori into the kunai and basically try to stab it through the heart of the Itachi clone. Now, Itachi would grab Sasuke's wrist and say, "Clone, this clone can definitely still beat you." Now, after this, Sasuke would realize he's still in the Genjutsu. Even him using the Mangekyo, he realized he can still get put in Genjutsu. Now, after this, he'd quickly break out of it, and they would get into a Taijutsu battle with Sasuke. And Kakashi would help in here and there, basically using the Headhunter Jutsu and stuff like that. Or the Fire Style Fireball Jutsu. Damn, I'm dying for this. Damn. Now, basically, the next attack, basically Naruto would then use, sit upon the frozen heavens, Hyorimaru, and he'd send Ice Dragon towards Itachi. Now, Itachi would see this and kind of just dodge out the way, and then he would feel behind Sasuke, Ichidori coming for him. Itachi would turn into crows, and then he'd reform, and then out of nowhere, Kakashi would put him in that same hold that he did in Canon, and he would say, "Now." After this, Naruto and Sasuke would charge their sword, or charge up their attacks with Sasuke charging up Chidori into his sword, and Naruto going bankai. After this, they charge at the same time, going for his heart, and then pretty much their swords would merge for a second before they would pretty much stab Itachi through the heart. Now, Hyorimaru was confused why their swords merged, but it was probably their will, and that this could never happen again. Now, after this, Itachi would say that he's proud of them before basically exploding, or not exploding, yeah, pretty much exploding, and they would see the person that they used as the clone. Now, basically, after this, that would mark the end of the obstacle for to head to the Sand Village, and after a few hours of flash stepping and body flickering and basically running towards the Sand Village, they would actually make it to the Sand Village. Now, Sakura would quickly heal Kankuro in around an hour, and they'd follow the footprints of the Akatsuki, or the Sound Ninja, my bad, Sasori and Deidara. Now, they'd be following the steps of Sasori and Deidara, and they'd find it to a cave. Now, basically, they'd see Team 10 there, and Sakura would quickly punch open the wall, where they'd see Gaara around 50% of his one's heals extracted, and basically they'd stop the extraction process, and they'd start to fight with Deidara trying to take Gaara away, and that would work. And Sasuke and Kakashi would go after him. It'd be Naruto, Sakura, and Chiyo versus Sasori. Now, Naruto would basically fight Sasori, while Sakura would also fight Sasori, with Chiyo helping as like a support character, I guess you could say. Now, Naruto would then raise his finger towards Sasori and use Bakuro number 63. Sajo Sabaku. After this, golden chains would pretty much form out of nowhere, going to wrap around Sasori. Now, Sasori would pretty much substitute himself away, and the shell of his form would get shattered. Now after this, his real form would be shown, and he'd pretty much summon all of his 10,000 puppets. Let's just say he could summon 10,000 puppets. Now Naruto would have like a sweat bead run down his forehead before Naruto would say, "Just destroy them with your Ryatsu." He would say to he would hear Hyorimaru say. After this, Naruto would then have a blue aura come over him, and he would raise his finger towards the air before going through the incantations of Hado number 90. After this, he would finish the incantation before he would use Hado number 90. Kurohitsuki. After this, a purple cube would form around the puppets before it would completely destroy them, leaving only the puppet parts. Now after this, Naruto would charge towards Sasori, and Chiyo's puppets would charge towards Sasori, where all the three of the swords would stab right through Sasori's heart. Now, right before, in regret, for Sasori's death, or Sasori in his last moments of death, or coming to death soon, he would then hand Naruto a map of the Akatsuki base and another information about him going to meet Orochimaru. Hopefully, thinking in the back of his head that maybe Naruto would heal him and pretty much let him go. Now Naruto did not do this, and he pretty much just stabbed his head, or took off his head, and that would be the end of Sasori. Now Sasuke and Kakashi would have definitely dealt with Sasori with Kakashi using his Mangekyo, while Sasuke would use the Chidori to nullify his explosion style. Now they would pretty much quickly kill Deidara, since they don't really have any use for him. And yeah, that would be the end of the Kazekage arc after Naruto would wake up Gaara, and Chiyo doesn't have to sacrifice herself. Now Gaara and Naruto would pretty much shake hands, and this would start the alliance between the Hidden Leaf and the Hidden Sand Village. Now after this, after the whole alliance with the Sand Village, Naruto would head back to the village and go back to his training. Now, he'd be in the middle of training 2 weeks in, training by a huge waterfall, trying to turn the waterfall into ice and then turn it back to normal. Now, he's been doing this for around 2 weeks, and he's having a little trouble. It's always been so easy to turn stuff into ice, but he never have to worry about turning it back. So, he had to feel the atmosphere itself. He had to feel the moisture in the air and basically erase it while turning that the rest of the air, the hydrogen in the air, into ice. So he had to figure out a way from turning that, taking out the hydrogen out of his ice, turning it back to water. He had to take it out and put it back in, basically turning it to its default form. So he had to train that for the next 2 weeks, which it's actually pretty hard once you really think about it. Now, this helped him very much with his abilities, since that's mostly his abilities, getting hydrogen out of the water and basically releasing it in a condensed attack. Now, after this 2 weeks of training and hearing about Asuma Saratobi's death, Naruto would get a little bit of emotional empowerment and train a little harder than usual, but I think that's pretty much what canon Naruto did. Now, basically, after the 2 weeks of training, he'd hear about Naruto, he'd hear about Kakashi, Sasuke, and Team 10, or what's remaining of it, would be on that mission, and they got roughed up a bit. After this, Yamato would say, you ready to go, Naruto? Naruto would then put on his, the white coat that Toshiro wears, that Captain Tayori, and he'd pretty much say, yeah, let's go. After this, Naruto, in this time, I would still have that Wunderreich outfit, since that is the drip. Now, I know that ability was from the girl who could make zombies out of people, but that outfit was still drippy. So he had to have that drippy Wunderreich outfit with the captain's coat over it. Now, basically, he'd head towards the forest, and he'd pretty much cut off one of Kakuzu's hearts when he's about to kill Kakashi with a fire attack. So he'd take down the fire heart pretty quick. Let's just say in this timeline, Sasuke and Kakashi got 3 hearts, and Naruto just got 1. So he only has 1 wind heart now. So when Naruto would pretty much see Kakuzu try to use a wind attack on him, Naruto would then use Bakuro Anyone Danku before flash stepping behind Kakuzu, saying, "Pathetic." He would then quickly cut through Kakuzu's wind heart and pretty much turn his body into nothing with his ability to take out moisture. So he'd pretty much have a similar ability to Crocodile, but it wouldn't be like sand, it would be ice. So that would be the end of that arc. Now, basically, this would start the arc where Jiraiya would go on that mission, and he would still unfortunately die. Now, Naruto in this timeline, right when Naruto would find out the news, and he'd be like walking in, and the Great Toad would tell him that Jiraiya died. Naruto would unconsciously, pretty much like right when he's going to slam the door to leave, he would actually accidentally turn the door into ice, and the ice would pretty much turn into dust. After this, he wouldn't really care about the door, so he's pretty mad about Jiraiya's death, and he'd pretty much have a similar time, with him getting the popsicle from Iruka and him healing. Now, the next day, Naruto would head towards the Hokage's office, and he'd still see the Toad, and the Toad would offer to train him and out Byakugo to see that true form of the sword. Naruto would be like, "How do you know about Kyorimaru's power?" And the Toad would say, "We'll explain later. Come on." After this, the Toads would reverse summon Naruto to the mountain, and he'd go meet the Great Sage. Now Naruto would walk up to the stairs to the Great Sage, and the Great Sage would tell Naruto that his power comes from a power far beyond the Otsutsuki's. It was from a man named Toshiro Hitsugaya, and Toshiro Hitsugaya gave him this power, the Great Legend itself. The Great Legend, the best ice Zanpakuto in the world back then, Hyorimaru. And that's what you call your sword, right? Hyorimaru. Does Naruto look at his sword and say, "Yeah, I do"? After this, the Great Sage says, "I sense a change in you, a metamorphosis with you. It's as if you become an adult, but you'll still be the same age as you are." Naruto would be confused at this until it clicked in his head that his bankai, one time Hyorimaru says your body isn't, matured for that, and maybe he was thinking this is similar to this. Now, one of the Toads, Kamakichi, would actually take him to a training room where they'd tell him, you can train here. Now, Naruto would spend the next a month training with his bankai, trying to get the adult form, while training a few Kido, but he's mainly focused on getting his adult bankai. Now, after a lot of training, he'd finally master his adult bankai, and after this, his sword would merge with his hands, like like a whole, like the chain of Hyorimaru wrap around his hand, and have a similar glove to Ichigo, but instead of it being black, it is like light blue, kind of to his ice, similar to the color of his ice. Sorry about that. But basically, Gamakichi would come running in after Naruto would walk out, and basically tell him that their pains are attacking Hidden Leaf Village, and the whole Akatsuki is attacking Hidden Leaf Village, or what's left of it. And they'd say it's time to go. After this, all the Toads, or the Toads that were with Naruto and Ken, would go with him, and they'd reverse summoning jutsu, and Naruto would have his drip. Now, for some reason, the part of Naruto would be there on top of the Toad, and he'd jump off, and they see the rest of the Akatsuki. Now, Obito would be there, and everyone, and pretty much Naruto would tell Obito that you can take off your mask now. We all know who you are. Now, Obito would pretty much take off his mask, and pretty much he'd start to do a weird jutsu. He started to merge with everyone, or absorb their chakra, similar to how the Karma Seal does. And he absorbed everyone, all the Pains, Kisame, and all the Akatsuki members that are left, and even Zetsu. Now, pretty much, Obito would become a transcendent being, and he would gain stuff like the Rinnegan, and his start to gain 6 paths chakra from absorbing Zetsu, and having 2 Rinnegans instead of just 1. Now, he would still have abilities of the Kamui, but he can't actually use as much. He would have to physically switch from the Rinnegan to the Sharingan, and he liked the Rinnegan more. So Obito, Obito would look at Naruto and pretty much say that he still can't sense him. Obito would say that Naruto is weak since he can't even sense him. Naruto would then tell Obito that you're just so weak that you can't sense me. Now, Naruto would pretty much raise his blade towards Obito before going Bankai. After this, all the flowers would trip away, and there would be a huge explosion of Ryatsu, basically covering the whole the Leaf Village with just this chill, this whole explosion of just mist, the chilly mist. After this, when the mist would clear, they would see Naruto as in his adult form, just similar looking to Toshiro Hitsugaya. Now he would pretty much flash step towards Obito before raising his blade, and Obito would try to clash with his blade or clash with a chakra rod, but the chakra rod would shatter, and Naruto would just punch Obito in the face, basically sending him into like mountains away, and basically destroying mountains that were miles and miles away. Now, basically, Naruto just became continental on that one attack. Now, basically, Naruto would raise his blade and use like a huge, like he would pour so much Ryatsu into his blade that his blade would become like the blade would start to show like the after effect of the Ryatsu, kind of like when Aizen was going to shoot down the Soul Society. That would pretty much show up in his blade, like the aura, and then be pretty huge aura. Now Naruto would then lower his blade and he'd be like, do a Ice Getsu Tensho or something similar to that. He'd send like a wave of Ryatsu at Obito, and this would like right before Obito would get hit by it, he's like, I still can't sense him. Is it because he's stronger than me? After this, he'd pretty much have some afterthoughts before he'd pretty much get sliced in half. Now, Obito would be defeated, and the whole threat about the Katsuki would be over. Now, there would be peace for a few years before Naruto would become Hokage himself. And he'd pretty much start in alliance with the other great nations, and there'd be nothing but peace. Now, this would pretty much end this series of What If Naruto Was Toshiro Hitsugai's Reincarnation. And I know I like doing this series, but I'm definitely going to have other bankers coming soon. Now, I'm going to finish the What If Naruto Was Kiraku's Reincarnation, and then I should start doing What If Naruto Was Kenpachi's Reincarnation. And without further ado, guys, have a good day.